Omakase, the life and words of author M. Karen. If this is our first time meeting each other, let me give you a brief introduction. My name is Max. I write books for a living. My pronouns are they, them, and welcome to another episode of my podcast. This is the second episode of 2019, and it feels good to be back. Let me just say that. And I made completely new assets. The podcast looks completely different, and it feels good. It was a journey finishing 2018. It wasn't the happiest conclusion to the year, but things are better now. I'm looking forward to this year, and I'm looking forward to this podcast because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. If you're unfamiliar with the format, it goes a little bit like this. First off, my week, what I've been doing, what I've been working on, what I've been up to creatively and not. After that, we have viewer questions. I have 2 questions sent from viewers just like you. We're going to be covering description. How do we describe characters, locations, and objects without being a little bit too unwieldy, while still giving a good image of what we want the viewers to see? We're also going to be talking about plot twists, turns, and reversals in the second question of the day. After that, we have the prompt. And I always like to give you a weird, interesting, bizarre prompt, a story idea. And I'm going to give you one that I've had brewing in the back of my head for like a couple of weeks now. Now, before we get started, there's 2 items of housekeeping I want to tell you. First and foremost, the song you hear in the beginning and at the end of the show is Dream of Green by the OC Jazz Collective. And if you would like to support me, there are links in the description of this podcast/video from my Patreon page, patreon.com/mkaren, to my Ko-fi page, ko-fi.com/mkaren. These are the 2 ways in which you can support me and get a shout out at the end of the show. All right, let's get started. What have I been doing? Well, creatively speaking, I've been doing lots of writing. I am back in the groove, as I mentioned in the previous episode. It feels great to be writing again, and there's been a very special new development with my writing process, but I am not ready to talk about it just yet. I want to give it a couple more weeks. I'm trying something new out, and as always, I like to give things time before I start, talking about how I have discovered the one amazing newest way to tell stories. Authors hate them. Find out M. Karen's 3 tips to writing 50,000 words in 3 minutes. That's facetious right there. But that's kind of how I feel about advice like that, really. That's why I'm going to give it a lot more time before I tell you what I've been doing. I've been writing. I've been having fun. It's good. It's been really good. It's also been raining lots. I don't know if you can hear it. Maybe Max from the future is doing a really good job with editing. It's been raining a lot over here in my little corner of California. So please don't mind the rainy season. So I know that I don't want to say rushing, because I'm not rushing. I don't have anything particularly exciting to say about my writing week, other than, I'm doing it at the same time every day. I'm getting the words done, the pages done. It feels good, man. It feels good. I'm listening to music when I work. I hype myself up during my walks. It's like everything is back to how it's ought to be. And that's good. And if anything, take that as a reminder that no matter how many times you may find yourself in a block, in a writer's block, you can always bounce back. Things can always get better, and they will. So just get back in there, okay? Okay. Now let's talk about some trash. Alright, so, my lovely spouse and I, we have another channel, and where we do lots of different types of content. Nothing like what I do here. Absolutely not. If you like to still know me as the serious Max who does inspirational advice, don't go check out that other channel. But the thing that we do is that we've been doing reviews/analysis of the first episode of every single new anime that has come out for the Winter Anime 2019 season. If you don't know about, Japanese anime, it's released in seasons, just like, every other kind of TV show. And winter is known for being really, really, really bad. It's kind of where they shove all the trash. So, my lovely spouse and I have been having fun? I'm having that introspection moment where I'm like, have we had fun? Has it been fun? So part of the challenge that we're doing is not only to get back into review and stuff, but also to just analyze the storytelling within the first episode of a show. Most of the shows that we've been watching are going to run for at least 12 episodes. So, we have read I would say like 7.5% of, a novel. 7.5% of the entire experience. Sorry for pausing. I got a little bit... I was like, did I do that math correctly in my head? No, it's 8.3% of the entire experience, 1 out of 12 episodes. And much like you would treat it, we wanted to treat it much like you would treat the first chapter of a novel, the first, 20-ish minutes of a movie. Does it grab our attention? Does it leave us wanting more? Because that is the ultimate goal of the first episode of a show, or, the first chapter of a story, is to grab you, and also to show you, the way in which the writers and, everyone else in the production deliver the storytelling of this particular show. Because they are, at the end of everything, stories. And as I foreshadowed earlier on, winter is where kind of all the trash gets shoved into. So most of what we've watched has been terrible. It's that thing, whether, whenever I want to talk about anime, I'm like, there's a huge asterisk hanging over my head that just says, most anime is not very good at all. Like, the ones that are really good are the ones that actually really check all the boxes of good storytelling. We have foreshadowing, we have, character-based struggles, developments, characters that actually change throughout the story. I'm talking about My Hero Academia right now. That's a good show. It only has, 2 things that I don't like about it. But other than that, that show's fantastic. If you remember, if you have been binge watching these episodes, 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, I was talking about that. My wife and I consumed that entire show because just the storytelling was so good. Both of us cried during one of the episodes. That's just how effective it was. And I am getting to a point, by the way. This is not Max rants about, a subject for, 12.5 minutes. Having done this whole experiment really showcased to me the very easy pitfalls to a first chapter. And these are all things that I've covered in the show before. There were a couple particular series that both began with throwaway sensitive topics that just kind of get used to kickstart the plot and are never referenced ever again. Really gross things that are just kind of treated as just, plot fodder. And the kind of things that you really should probably not only center the story around them, but really talk about them. If you're going to talk about really, really real things right now, you should probably actually talk about them, not just use them, for shock value / throwaway things. So, we have that, taking real things that, people in the real world are struggling with and just using them as just throwaway plot points. That's one thing right there. Then we have the shows that just start running without any explanation whatsoever. And I know what you're thinking, Max, don't you love in media res? I love in media res. I like starting a story in the middle of things happening. But you also explain things to people when things first become relevant. I feel like that's the two polar opposites of two different kinds of ineffective world building. There were the series that start you off with no world building, and you have no idea who the people are that you are watching or what they're doing. There was one we watched that felt as though we were watching episode 5. I'm like, these characters are all acting like they know each other. We don't know their names. We don't know who they are or what they do. And, by the end, we're like, okay, hold on. Did someone make a mistake? Did someone upload episode 5 instead of episode 1? No, that was episode 1. No explanation whatsoever. And then you have the other polar opposite of shows that started, it's a 23-minute episode, and half of it is world building that is never gonna get referenced ever again. That's bad. Don't do that. I talked about this in my hard lessons of 2018, but make world building available to the readers the instant it becomes relevant to the story. Not before, probably not after. Like, literally, if you have a wizard using their weird wizard magic, you should probably explain how the wizard magic works. If not in its entirety, probably in a brief way so the viewers and the readers understand, hey, oh, that's what's happening. Okay, that's why they're doing that weird thing. Okay, I can follow you along with this. And I feel like the ones that really nail it are the ones that balance between giving you enough information, giving you questions for you to think about, and giving you the answers when the time comes for the answers. I feel like that's the perfect equilibrium, and you can have that equilibrium in the first episode of a show. I hate to say it like this, because I don't have fun pointing out bad media, but a bunch of it was really bad, and I can just go on for days. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think my lovely spouse and I, by the time this goes up, I think there's already 4 videos out, but, we go through them piece by piece, and I can't do that on this podcast. So instead, I'm gonna balance things out. Yes, we watched a lot of really bad anime. We have watched a lot of really bad first episodes, bad first attempts. And what hurts me the most is that that's the first episode. That's the one where you probably put most of your budget in. That's the one that got the most revisioning happening, the most people looking at it, the one that you got to make without having to be under pressure to get the next episodes out, the one that you showed to your investors and your producers, and that's what you showed. But I'm gonna balance all that trash out, okay? Let me just really quickly talk about the only good first episode we saw. The only good one. And I know there's one that checks all the boxes for good, concise, effective storytelling. And that was the first episode of The Promised Neverland. Concise, clean, effective, fun, interesting. It leaves you with the crazy plot twist that makes you want to watch the next one right away. That right there is what makes a first chapter effective. And my wife and I made a whole video about it. But kind of the big point is that first episode wasted no time, or wasted none of your time, because every single plot element that comes up, every single thing that characters bring up comes back. It loops back into itself. And you end up feeling as though nothing was wasted. And like I mentioned, it felt effortless. Because when writing is really good, it feels effortless. And that's how you know. And that's how I know that whoever, was working on that story put a lot of work in there to make it feel so effective. It also has this crazy plot twist at the end, and I'm like, ooh, I thought we were going to spend half of the season working up to this plot point, but you just get it on episode 1. And of course, that's the one Kitty and I are following week to week. So, if you don't like anime, I can't inspire you to watch it. There's just nothing in me that I can say. But, if you're already in, you should check out the first episode of The Promised Neverland. I think it's available on most streaming services. That is The Promised Neverland. Alright, I went on for way too long on that, so let's move away from my week, also known as Max Rambles About Anime for approximately 12.5 minutes, over to the sponsors for this show. This show is brought to you thanks to you, the lovely viewers who are supporting me directly through patreon.com/mkaren. If you pledge $1 and up, you can get early access to this podcast. You actually get an exclusive RSS feed that you can just subscribe on your favorite podcast app of choice, and you just automatically get the newest episode a week before they go live on YouTube and everywhere else. That's cool. And if you pledge more, you get more cool perks, least of which is just getting a shout out in the middle of the show. So here we go. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to Attilak. Attilak has a DeviantArt page. You can find out more about their writing and their art over at deviantart.com/AHTILAK. Also, Hero Song. Hero Song is writing LGBT plus positive novels. You can find out more about their work over at smashwords.com. Do a quick search for Hero Song. And also, A. Howard. Elisa Dudley, Amelia, Angela, Brenda, Kristen Lufton, Gilbert Gaudreau, Irina Phoenix, Lacey, Lishadra, Nicola, Pat Eichson, Polly Craftool, Soulmuse, and Synexia. Alright. It is time for viewer questions. Every week, I like to tackle 2 questions. We have, I don't want to say as simple and an advanced one. I like to kind of balance it out. Sometimes do a little bit of inspirational, some technical stuffs. Today we have 2 technical questions. We're going to be talking about description and reversals / plot twists / turning points. Let's begin with the lighter one first. A dear viewer reached out to me asking, Max, I just need help with descriptions. They talked about unwieldy descriptions where they feel as though they're just going on for pages about stuff that doesn't matter, while also juggling this, fear and anxiety that they're not describing enough. They want their readers, to know what they're seeing. But they feel as though they can't strike a balance. So let's talk about descriptions. Now, as always, all the advice you're about to hear, is my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. So, right off the bat, I want to say that, you have to find your own personal medium. You have to find what makes you happy and what makes you look at your story and go, yes, that's enough. During the first draft, and I should have started with this. During the first draft, don't care at all about this. I know, you're worried. It's likely you sent me this question while writing the first draft. During the first draft, write what comes to mind. If you must go on pages describing your character's room, do so. Get all of that on the page. You may end up keeping it. You may end up having to cut it, but you will never know unless you make it all the way through the first draft. That right there is the reality of things. That's never going to change. I recommend just write it. Just write it and move on. It is also entirely likely that you may find your own happy medium in the act of writing the novel. But that being said, how do we arrive at this happy medium? Because from my point of view, I have always been of the mind that less is more. And that's my happy medium. My happy medium is just giving the reader enough so that they know what they're looking at, enough so that they can imagine it in their minds, but not enough as though to make my descriptions oppressive, to make them, this is exactly what things look like, and there's absolutely no leeway. That's my happy medium. That's kind of where I balance things. Just enough so that almost like an outline, you could say. You can imagine, if you squint your eyes, you can see the character. The finer details are up to you. I arrived at this, happy medium through my own personal experiences. I have read so many books by really, really famous authors that start a story and, you don't get a description for a character who you have seen and who you have heard until, 3 chapters in. I can feel myself getting mad. I can feel myself tipping the salt shaker, just shaking it. I'm getting salty. I'm like, I read this book by this really big author, and I'm like, it's been 30 pages, and I don't know what the main character looks like. And you know what? By the time I got to the description, I was like, I have already done my own casting for this show. I have already figured out what the main character looks like, and your description is way too late to the party, and you can't make me change it. Sometimes I do try to keep, this amorphous being of a character in my mind until it clears up when I get the description, but, those situations of, a writer waiting 3 chapters to finally tell you what the main character looks like happens way too often, and I don't get it. I'm, baffled by it. Because, wouldn't you want me to know what your character looks like soon? Also, especially, some of those chapters can be really long, so sometimes we're talking, for 90 pages. That's silly. I read a bad book last year, And I'm happy just saying it was a bad book. It was a bad book that didn't describe the monsters the main party of adventurers was fighting until 90 pages in. That's comical. That's silly. Don't do that. Don't do that. Only villains do that. So that's why, in my happy medium, I say describe the person as soon as they're in. If there is a story reason why you can't, or a pacing reason why you can't, then, either have that be in the story somehow. It can be one of those things where it's like they were dressed in a way in which I couldn't see their face. That's fine. That's completely fine. But, that's more of a story thing than a description thing. The other part of how I've arrived at this opinion is that sometimes I would get the description way too late. And I feel that, you're going to find your happy medium based on the things that you like and you don't like in fiction. But for me, I was like, if the description is way too late, it might as well not have shown up at all. If it's going to take you, 3 chapters to tell me what the main character looks like, by that point, I've done my own casting. Another facet of that are stories that I've read in which there's, basically no description at all for what the main character or the characters around them looks like, other than just, very, very vague, simple things, to the extent that, and, this is, I bring this one up every once in a while, mostly because it just baffled me. I read a book by a really good fantasy author, and I didn't realize until the moment when I went to pick up the role-playing game based on that fantasy series that I had no idea what the main character looked like. I was like, yeah, that's kind of like my mental image is kind of like this person, and then I pick up the game and I'm like, who the heck is that blonde kid? That's not the main character. My main character looked like this. So it's one of those things, where there was such a brief description. I know there must have been a description, but it was so brief and so short that it never even settled in my mind. So that's a little bit of a problem. Also, to me, the instant I got this question, I immediately knew what to talk about, because those are the 2 anchor moments. The 2 moments in fiction where I realized, okay, I don't want to do that. So how do I tackle description? Well, as I mentioned, I make it a point to describe characters the instant that you have a chance, or, the camera lens has a chance to look at them. If there are story reasons why you cannot describe someone, that's fine. But the instant the camera gets to focus on them, you describe them so that the viewer gets to do their casting. You describe them. That's the first thing. The second thing that I like to do is that I like to give an overview of the character, but not go crazy on the details. Some have said that I do very light description of my characters, and I don't particularly see that as a bad thing. I like to give you a general outline of what the character looks like, almost as though to give you a guideline for your own casting. Because the reality is this: no matter how hard you try, no matter how you can be really, really, really specific, but no matter what, the reader is gonna do their own casting for the book. They're gonna cast their own actors. They're gonna get their own face claims. You can't do anything about that. So instead of really, really forcing it, sometimes I just like to just give them a general outline. I focus a lot on body type. I focus on, the appearance of a person's face, the kind of hair they have, the very overarching things, the things you would first notice on a stranger, the clothes on their back, the build of their body, and then more specifically their face. And that's pretty much it. There's, of course, a little bit of leeway here and there. If there's a very particular physical feature that you would notice if you saw them in person, then I would definitely describe it to you. But generally, that's how I kind of treat it. I treat it as though someone that you see on the street and you would only catch them for a glimpse. What would you notice in them? Aside from character descriptions, how do we tackle describing environments and describing actions and describing moments in the story? Regarding, locations and stuff like that, I tackle them very similarly. It's one of those things that I bring out in the prompt. I'm describing a location of a situation, and I'm like, what the room looks like is up to you. I picture it this way, but what you do with it, or what you want to do with it is up to you. Sometimes you don't have to go super crazy in the description of the environments, because again, the reader is going to develop their own environment. But you should always give them a guideline. If there is a landmark, if there is a focus, if there is something you would immediately notice walking into this, metaphorical room, then you should definitely describe that. That's kind of how I like to tackle that. If there's something you would notice, just like something you would notice on a person that just walked by you, what is the main biggest feature you would notice? Now, I know that I've gone really long on this point, so let me just turn for a second and just talk about just general description. If there's something that is very important to the story and something that you want the reader to know, describe it. Describe what that character's voice sounded like when they said that word. Describe what their face looked like when they witnessed that event. Describe objects in the scenery if they're important. If the camera, wink wink, is focusing on an object or an expression, describe them. And this right here is probably the hardest part of description. How can I, describe something in a way that is effective? And that is ultimately, that's the struggle right there, That's like saying, how do I write the first line of the story? That's the struggle. You have to figure that out. It helps to me in stories that have a narrator to think how that person would describe things. I'm having a lot of fun with the narrator in my current story because she is a very specific kind of person and she tackles things in a very specific way. So all of the descriptions have come to me very easily because I get her. No, I understand her character, and the words just slip by my fingers. It's just so quick because I know exactly how she would describe, the events that are happening. How she would describe rooms. How she would describe all otherworldly events happening around her. So in a way, I recommend imagining how the narrator would tackle this story. And as I mentioned, if you're in the first draft, don't worry about any of this. Just capture everything that comes to mind. Even if it means you spending 10 pages describing what the banquet looked like, that's fine. Just write all of it. Worst comes to worst, you end up reworking that later. Best case scenario, it's some great writing and you end up keeping it. It ends up being one of the best moments in the story. You never know that. You never know. Sometimes you're writing a fantastic line, a great mic drop moment, but because you're in the first draft, you don't see it. You never know. Capture everything. And when time comes for revision, really analyze what you're saying, what your descriptions say about the characters in the story. And I'll tell you right now, most of the time when I end up cutting back on description is because it's taking away from the moment at hand. I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to slide that under the door. Sometimes you may end up cutting back on description because the events that are happening at the moment take priority. Okay? Okay. Did I say that was going to be a quick one? Oh, man. There you go. If you want better proof that I'm just a fool, there you go. Did I say that was going to be a quick one? Anyhow, second question of the day, coming from longtime follower, longtime viewer, listener, Mark Maruska, asking about story reversals, turning points, and plot twists. Now, the reversal or the turning point are described as moments in the story in which the trajectory that you thought the story was going to take changes. It's ultimately a form of the plot twist. You think the story is going one way, but then it doesn't. Imagine it as though, driving in a road and suddenly there is just a sharp turn where you thought there would be a straight path. There's a little bit of an added definition for reversals and turning points because people see them as a chance for the story to grow longer, for there to be more story, more events to happen. And I don't want to say that I've never thought of them that way, mostly because my stories have no problem going longer than what I planned them to be. But I see them ultimately as different forms of the plot twist. So, when I got Mark's question, and this is something that I've had questions about in the past, so I feel very comfortable kind of covering, how many story reversals should there be in my story? How many plot points, plot twists, reversals, turning points should there be in my overall story? And of course, I don't feel there's a hard rule for this. I don't feel that, the right answer was, let me look at my notes, 3.5 plot twists. Now that's silly, but I think I shuffled my pages and I'm like, no, time to fix them. I think that the plot twist, the parts in which the story changes and our perceptions of the characters, the world, and the events shift, I find them, because I feel like when we talk about these, we look at these as though they're external things, as though there are things external to the story. They are elements that we inject into the story. When in reality, they are natural progressions of the story. Sometimes you begin writing a novel with the plot twist in mind. You begin writing a novel knowing, okay, and then this is gonna happen. Just when you think this is the story you were kinda into, boom, it's a different story now. Sometimes you do that. Not all stories have these dramatic, world-changing reversals where suddenly the whole perception of the story gets changed. I think there is always a sort of plot twist in stories. There's a moment in which things change. I like to think of it sometimes as like the point in the heist where everything goes wrong, And I feel like, now that I said that, I wish I could come back and say that again. Because like I do feel that that's a different example that is also effective. Because, in a heist novel or in a heist story, you spend a big part of it coming up with the plan, imagining how things are going to go. And to me, the reversal or the turning point is where everything goes wrong. Where all the plan falls apart and the characters now have to, make it up as they go. That right there, I like that because it's putting the plot twist at the climax or before the climax of the story, where most people see the plot twist happening at the very climax or near the end of the story. And that also goes without saying that, there are stories in which the plot twist happens at the very beginning, happens, within the first opening chapters, where a character's seemingly everyday life is changed forever. That too is a plot twist. That too is a reversal or a turning point. It's a moment in which the trajectory of the story changes. It's no longer going to be this teenager's, last year in high school, but now it's this supernatural story or magical story or, this completely different thing. So there's that. But I find myself coming back to the question. How many plot twists should there be? How many turning points does a story need to have? And, that's the kind of questions that I don't want to just hand wave by saying, why should there be a number? But ultimately, I think that this is a matter of the story. This is a thing that is an element inside of the story itself. It's not something we can just inject into the story. I'm going to add a little extra note because I know that Mark Maruska is editing right now. He is revising a story. So I have the faint feeling I'm going to make a judgment call. This question is coming in part because he's looking at his plot and he's, at his story, at his novel, his manuscript, and he's thinking to himself, is there enough twists in this? And, one very easy exercise is just to go through the events of your story, writing them out, and seeing the points at which the story becomes different, or where an element that you thought was set in stone changes dramatically. These moments in which you learn something new about a character, or something changes, or a new obstacle appears. These are all turning points, or plot twists. Look at your story through those lenses. Look at your story through all those moments in which something changed, whether it was a matter of perception, events in the story, or obstacles appearing. Because I know it's very easy to look at the whole story, especially if you've been editing for a while, to just look at it as just one thing, and you ask yourself, well, where's the big plot twist? But if you look at it, if you carefully look through the story, you will notice that there's a bunch of things that happen. And the reader will notice those things. They will notice them because they will be experiencing it for the first time. And it's a little bit different for us, the writers, to notice those things, especially if we have been revising for a very long time. That is also why feedback is very important. Because it's that sort of thing where you think to yourselves, oh no, there is no plot twist in this story. No one's going to find it interesting. They'll think that everything just kind of happens like it's on autopilot. And then you get feedback like, oh my god, I did not see that particular thing coming. So you never know. Ultimately, what I recommend is that if you've been looking at your story for a long time and you're thinking to yourselves, I don't know if enough happens in the story or if it needs another plot twist, look at it from another point of view. Okay? Okay. Talking about cats, let's step into the prompt. Every week, I like to give you a crazy, weird, bizarre exercise. More often than not, a story idea that I've had in the back of my mind for a bit, and I like to just throw it your way. I was gonna say, put a message in a bottle, but then I realized that the whole tossing it part makes it way more violent than I thought. Just sliding it into a bottle and just throwing it into sea. Just seeing who gets that message in the bottle. If today's prompt inspires you to create, if today's prompt makes you want to make something, whether it is a short story or any other kind of fiction, you are free to do so. This story, the instant you start working on it, it is yours. Your time, your writing, yours. Okay? Okay. Let's go. This is a prompt about a cat. And I like to think of this. See, I'm so clever. See, we were talking about plot twists / reversals, so now here I am, bringing a little bit of that into the fun. I have a story idea for you. And it is related to what I was talking about just a minute ago. Coming into a story with the plot twist in mind, it is in part why I have struggled with this story idea. Because I have the plot twist, but I have not sat down to work every other part of it. And as you know, I'm writing right now. I have like 5 manuscripts that need editing. I'm too busy. So I'm going to give you this story. I've been working this out for a few weeks now. I have the plot twist. Oh, or rather, I have a plot twist. What you do with it is up to you. Okay? What I need for this story, and what you may need, you need a person. I'm thinking of an adult. It can't really be a teenager. It has to be someone living in their own, or living in a home. It can be a couple. In different incarnations of the story, I imagine that being a couple, but one person might just be enough. I imagine this kind of being a horror story, to be entirely honest. One person, living on their own. A tiny apartment, the old family home. If it's in a small town or a big city, it doesn't matter. It's a place somewhere, and this person lives there. And they live there with their pet. This pet is a cat. And for all of you cat haters out there, it can be a dog too, that's fine. A pet. I like to think of it as a cat because I love cats. The setup for the story is very simple. This owner and their cat have been living in here for a little while. Their life, although not free from turmoil, because we don't want to make it too easy on them, life has been good, but not without turmoil. I imagine beginning the story with a little bit of misdirection by focusing a lot on the problems of the owner, the problems of the person living there. It can be something about their job, maybe a relationship thing. I like a little bit of misdirection for the readers who don't know what the heck they have just stepped into. They start the story thinking that it's going to be about, oh no, I can't believe that I cheated on my, boyfriend of, 15 years or something like that. And throughout this very first part of the story, our main character, their mind is completely filled with all these, my promotion, and oh no, some guy slashed my tires. They don't realize that their cat is nowhere to be found. Now, I don't know how long this phase of the story should take. I don't know if it should be like a day or a week. Also, it's raining really loudly outside. I hope you don't mind that. I don't know how long this phase of the story should be. If it's an outside cat, then I definitely think that like a longer amount of time may be required for it to make it creepy enough that the owner actually worries about it. But if it's an indoor cat, I feel like literally a day is good enough. A day of the owner going, where's my cat? They look in the closets, they look everywhere, they can't find the cat, but they assume the cat has to be in there somewhere. So they don't worry about it. I want to walk the line between the owner, is not worried at all, and then really worried. Like a little bit in between, It's like, I looked for my cat, I can't find them, but, they're an indoor cat, they have to be in here somewhere. They're probably in some box in the closet somewhere. And I want to walk that line. I want to walk that line up until the instant that they legitimately get worried. It's like it's the morning of the second day, and they're like, okay, the food's in the bowl, the water's in the bowl, they haven't been eating, where's my cat, what happened to them? And then they turn around and the cat's there. And it looks just like their cat. And there's absolutely, physically speaking, there's absolutely nothing different about them. And here we arrive at the twist. A twist that we know about because we're the writers. The character doesn't know that. The cat is certainly aware of this. The twist that I've been thinking about is that cat is not what it appears to be. I've had this prompt in the back of my head for a few weeks now. Because I've had that thing that we writers do where we look at something and we go, what if it was this creepy thing instead? It's that thing where like I see my cat, in the mornings, and I'm like, what if one morning he wasn't how he always was? What if one morning Yanto wasn't a big baby and was begging for treats as soon as I woke up? What if he was just very regal, like just sitting on the couch or something like that, or just sitting on the table in a very regal manner, in a way that he would never do that? What if my cat started behaving differently just one random day? What would that mean? What is the reason behind it? Now, I have my ideas. I have my weird ideas, you know me. What is that thing? Is it still a cat? Is it another cat that happens to look just like your, previous cat? I don't believe that. The doors were locked. The windows were closed. Who is that? What is that? That's the twist right there. Owner, house, pet. Pet disappears. Pet returns. Pet behaves strangely. And now, it's yours. What is going on in this home? What is that creature? What if they were not some horrible monster, as many of us are thinking? What if it was something else? And what if there was another, greater twist hidden between the walls of that house? Hi there. I know that I kind of left you there at the end, but the thing is, I don't want to say I haven't thought more about it, but it's that thing where it's like, that's all I need to give you, because I know that just by giving you the scenario and the possibility of a twist, all of you already know what you would do, or you already have an idea of what you would do. There's the I don't want to say the easy or the obvious, but there is the straightforward initial plot twist that cat is something that, or it is something claiming to be a cat. A monster is the easiest way to go. And you could have like a very slow, what I like to think of as a Junji Ito kind of story where the cat very slowly changes into something else. And because it's happening so gradually, the main character doesn't actually notice what's going on. Something like that, that kind of existential horror thing of like, oh, the people around you are changing in ways you can't notice. That's one way. But I love the possibility of the double twist, you know? While our character was worrying about their breakup or their tires being slashed, and now they're worrying about their pet, there is something else. Something that combines both things together. Now you're thinking. Now you're off in your own land. You're not listening to me right now, you're imagining stuff. See, I'm just the white noise in the background. Just while you're coming up with your own ideas, imagining the characters. I gave you no description, I gave you nothing, and you still have a mental image for the protagonist, a mental image for the pet, and a mental image for what the twist is gonna be. That right there is the magic. Boom. It's so much fun. I love recording this podcast. That's why I love having this segment at the end. It hypes me up for the next one. And I hope you tag along for that one as well. Hey there. The name's Max, also known as M. Karen, and you were listening to Omakase, a writing advice and inspiration podcast by yours truly. I hope you had fun. I hope that I gave you another point of view. And I hope that if anything, I gave you the fodder for you to think about stories in a different way. Okay? Okay. I'm gonna roll into the end of the video club, where I give shoutouts to every person who supports me through patreon.com/mkaren and buys me coffee. I will probably say some really, really silly jokes. That's what you ought to get out now. You should get out now while you still think very highly of me. Okay? I hope you have a lovely day. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright, so now about them shoutouts. Let's see about shoutouts. Have I got any new cups of coffee? Now, I'm recording this really close to the previous episode, so, you know, don't feel bad. I always check, so don't feel bad. Let me see. Is this... Oh, perfect. I got it. Okay. So, the following are every single person pledging $1 and up on my Patreon page who earn not only the ability to listen to these podcasts early, but also get a shout out from yours truly. First off, going in alphabetical order, A. Howard, Atlak, Alistair Baywood, Alex Cast, Elisa Dudley, Amanda Stevens, Amelia, Angela, Aniexo Hoshi, Biting the Sun, Blarg. I always like to give a little bit extra to Blarg. Like I like to do my best. It's like I'm doing my my audition for like monster sounds in a video game. It's like, you know, like you swing your sword and then the goblin just goes. There you go. And this is this is my audition. You know, I mean, listen, I want to get my career as a voice, a voice person started, but you know, Yuri Lowenthal just doesn't return my calls. It's almost like he's not at all related to him getting me hired. Brenda, C.E. Richards, Caitlin, the other Caitlin, Kathy Lindsay, Christiane, Christine Dennis, Kristen Lofton, Clem Pastor, Connor, Arisos, Joffrey, Raby, Gilbert Gaudreau. Oh, then see, I slipped. I did a cancel out of my shoutout voice into my fighting video game voice. Gilbert Gaudreau, Hero Song, Irina Phoenix, Janosch Hebutsky, Jaytana Kirkwood, Jeffrey James Williams, Jay Sawicki, Juan Nunes, K.M. Anderson, Kameshwar Rao Shaluri, Kaylee, Kiel, Lacey, Lear Killo, Lishadra. Hey Lear, hey Lishadra. I'm sorry I haven't been on the Discord recently, okay? This is the worst place for me to apologize. I've just been so busy. Listen, the podcast is back. We'll play games again on the Discord, I promise. Mary Foster Smith. What a terrible place to put apologies. But you know what? Wouldn't that be even better if you're like, oh man, I wonder why Max hasn't been on the Discord. Maybe I'll listen to the podcast and then I'm like, hey, that's meta. Is that what meta means? I don't know. Nicola! Nicole Grissom. Nicolay. Mary Foster Smith. Noam Sohar. Novels and Tomes. Pablo. Pat Eichson. Polly Craftwell. Raquel Fernandez. Rhiannon August. Roa. Listen, one thing about, growing up Mexican is that you get to roll your R's. You don't get to make it out of first grade without learning how to roll your R's. Shimmer Tales. Sky D. White. Soul Muse. Sylvia Leitilla, Synexia, and Wendy Christopher. And so, the rolling of the R's concludes, and so we find ourselves at the end of the show. How are y'all doing? I want to say that I had lots of fun recording today. And I guess that's the weird thing about this podcast, because it inspires, Take two. It inspires me as much as it inspires you. I always come out of this podcast feeling better. And I'm excited to go out into the world. Now that you have the cat story, that story is yours. I don't have to think about it ever again. I get to go back out into the world, searching for ideas. Looking at the world with new eyes. Because there are story ideas out there. Waiting. Sometimes all it takes is just to look at your cat in the morning and wonder, what if they are not who they claim to be? Sometimes that's all you need. Go out into the world, have fun, keep telling stories, and remember, today is a good day to write.